Thank you for joining me today. So, I decided I would do my episodes, my Organizedpreneur episodes live on social media. Particularly, right now, I'm starting out on my um, Organizedpreneur Podcast page um, on Facebook as well as YouTube. And then later, on Tuesdays, the episode will also be on the podcasting platform. So I'm pretty excited about this. And my goal is to do this on Fridays because Fridays are my content creation day. So on Fridays, I do all of my podcast episodes and my articles, and I schedule my social posts and things like that. So it's my content creation day, which is on Friday. So welcome to the Organizedpreneur Podcast. This is where we help you to organize your business, optimize your systems, and amplify your voice through podcasting. I'm your host, Aldreama Harper, and I want to thank you for joining me today. By way of introduction, just in case you have not heard of me, or maybe this is your first time engaging with me, I'm a podcast launch strategist and business system consultant, and um, I love helping you to get organized, get heard, and get leads. I decided to combine those experiences to share my insider tips and proven strategies so that you can avoid. And so today we're going to be diving into a question that I see come up quite a bit in the podcasting space. And as a matter of fact, someone had posted a question, and I wanted to posted this particular question about podcasts. How do you research potential guests for your show? And I thought that was such a great question. So I decided I would do an episode on that because, hey, if they're asking that, perhaps that's something you would like to know as well. So if you're joining me live, if you are on one of the social pages on the social media pages that that you are seeing right now, I would love it if you would post a comment or a question or what have you. And again, I want to thank you for joining me. But if you've ever struggled to find guests, so let's get back to the topic. If you've ever struggled to find guests that align with your message, or you brought someone on that didn't quite connect with your audience, that this episode is for you. So I remember when I first launched the Organizedpreneur podcast several years ago, I started out by doing interviews. I interviewed people, um, and I figured, okay, this way, this would help me reach, tap into their audience. And perhaps that might be a reason why that you want to research, or if you're looking at this, um, or listening to this episode, this may be the reason that you are actually interested in having potential guests for your show. And so, but I wished I had known this when I first started out podcasting. Now, if you know my story, you know I've launched 3 podcasts. The first podcast was Organize Your Enterprise. It's got about 12 or 14 episodes. My second podcast was with my business partner. We have about 400 episodes. Yay. And so this one is um, or the Organizedpreneur Podcast. And so I have several episodes, but probably like the first, I don't know, uh, um, 10, 15 episodes were strictly interview episodes. And so some of this I just did not know when I was looking for guests for my episodes. I was just like, okay, who do I know that might be a good fit? Right. And then I would reach out to them, and boom, we would just kind of, jump on an episode, do an episode. Right. But there is a strategy behind it. Right. And so when this question was asked about researching potential guests for your show, again, I wanted to just kind of, you know, let me just do an episode on that. So, um, this is for you. if you want to know more about how to research potential guests. Okay. And I'll do some other episodes on other things if you're following my podcast. I'll put the links in the links below so that you can continue to follow me, as well as if you want to jump on a strategy call. I'll put a link in the comments section as well and in the show notes when the show airs. So let's get started. So, why guest research matters. This is the first part. Like researching matters. Okay? Don't do what I do, what I did. So I did not do enough research on the people that I had on my show. My podcast is primarily solo, and so I don't have a lot of guests unless they're my clients, or someone that I feel like is going to be a good fit for my audience, right? And so, step number one is research. So, but let's start with the why, because having the right guest isn't just about filling an interview slot. It really is about alignment. And so I know I started out saying this just a second ago. When I first started out, I was doing interview episodes. And there were a couple of times that I had some people, a guest, one or two on my show that wasn't quite a good alignment. Not that they were bad people, not that they were you know, there was anything wrong with their particular content, that, or the things that they did. It was just not a good, alignment was just not quite there. So researching actually matters. And I realize now, years later, that my research was not as good as it should have been. And the thing I want you to think about is that your podcast, I want you to think of your podcast as a brand ecosystem. Okay, a brand ecosystem. I want you to write that down. And every guest on your podcast should qualify. They should complement your message. They should bring value to your audience and bring credibility to your platform. And this is something that I just didn't think about, right? In other words, don't invite guests who just sound interesting. Invite guests that align in those ways, right? Because when your guest story supports your message, your listeners can experience the transformation and not just be entertained. You don't want your podcast to be just entertainment unless you are unless that's the genre that you're in, right? So research matters. Research matters. So I'm going to give you some steps in that, okay? So step one is to start with your mission, not with your guests. These are so powerful. And again, these are things that I wished that I had done when I was doing, guest interviews. And I am going to, at some point, probably maybe in the next few weeks, start interviewing again, because now I understand the importance of going through this process, right? So, step one, you want to start with your mission, not with your guests. So, before you open, Google or scroll LinkedIn, you want to pause and revisit your podcast purpose. What is the purpose of your podcast? In other words, what is the transformation do you want your listeners to experience? Okay. What topics or values matter most to my brand? Okay. And what what gaps exist in my content library that maybe my guests could fill? Because I don't know it all. I can't do it all. I wouldn't even, try, because that doesn't make sense. So what transformation do I want my listeners to experience? What topics or values matter most to my brand? And what gaps exist in my content library that maybe other guests can fill? So, like, if your show is about business systems, which mine is business systems and productivity, then bringing on a viral TikTok creator might not, it might get me some clicks, right? But it doesn't serve my long-term audience goals. It just may not. I'm not even on TikTok for one, and not that content creation isn't important to maybe some people that might be listening. Maybe you are on TikTok, but my point is this: it has to be in alignment with your podcast purpose, your business purpose, because we're talking about your podcast that actually will be in alignment with your business. This is what I teach my clients. And so instead, a system coach like myself and a podcast launch strategist like myself, who automates small businesses, or time management expert, might be an expert who will be in alignment and fit my mission better. Right? So I got to consider all of those things. So that's the first. So the first step is start with your mission, not with your guest. Okay, start with your mission, not with your guest. Step two, research in layers. Research in layers. Use tools like, okay, so first, let me back up. Discover is the first layer. Okay, you want to use tools like Podchaser, I can't even talk today. Podchaser or Listen Notes. Go there to find people who are already speaking on the topics that you speak on, and then that can complement what you do, right? So discover is the first layer. You also want to use a tool like LinkedIn, right? Identify those thought leaders that are in your niche. Instagram, YouTube, you want to evaluate the personality, because that's important too, because the chemistry has to be good. And you want to evaluate the personality and communication style and audience engagement. Okay. Go and listen to at least one podcast episode if they are podcasters. Like for me, I would talk to those that, perhaps they have a podcast, because I talk about podcast strategies. Okay, podcast launch strategies. Listen to at least one podcast episode, or watch a clip, 3 to 5 minute clip of the person before reaching out to them. You got to do your homework, right? And pay close attention to how they communicate. Um, do they bring clarity? Do they bring substance? Or are they just talking, right? Because you want to bring value to your audience. Okay, so that's the first layer, discover. The second layer is align. So we're still talking about uh, research, right? We're still talking about starting with your mission and not your guest. Okay. So, um, and so align is number two. Check for values and audience overlap. Ask yourself, does this person's message reinforce or compete with mine? That's important, right? Who is their audience? And does it overlap with mine? How do they show up publicly? Brand consistency, professionalism, tone, all of these things are important, because alignment creates synergy, and synergy builds trust with your audience. Okay? So that's layer number 2, align. Layer number 3, verify. Before you confirm, right? Review their credentials and credibility. Review their credentials and or credibility markers, I should say. Guest appearances on other shows, articles, or case studies they've contributed to, testimonials or collaborations with reputable brands. This is all important. All right. If your guest has a solid expertise and integrity, they'll elevate your brand by association. This is important because people are going to watch who you associate with, right? They're going to watch who you associate with. And so you want to make sure that you are very, very um, careful, right? And you want to make sure that they have solid expertise and integrity and that they'll elevate your brand by association. Okay. All right. Segment. So that was layer number 3. All right. So now that we've talked about researching in layers, and let me go over that really once again. Discover, okay, is layer 1. Layer 2 is align, and layer 3 is verify. All right. So now the next thing you want to do, so that was research in layers. The next thing you want to do is organize your guest pipeline. Okay. I talk a lot about my APACT system, that is APACT system. And the C stands for creating structure. Okay. And this applies here too. This applies in when I'm helping my clients to get organized. I don't go to people's homes anymore, but I will help you organize your podcast structure and your business. And so when you're doing research, you want to make sure that you use the C in the APAC system for creating the structure. Okay, you want to create a guest research spreadsheet. You may have the columns like the name, the specialty niche, their social media links, notable work or episodes, alignment notes, right? Um, and as well as just the status, whether you've invited them, they've confirmed, scheduled, and recorded the episode or not. So you want to make sure that you you have some structure uh, when you organize your guest pipeline. I'm always going to talk about getting organized in whatever whatever episode I'm doing, right? So that is step 3, organize your guest pipeline. All right. When you systemize your guest workflow, you'll avoid scrambling and you will stay strategic. That's very, very important. Make sure that you have some type of a system. Okay. And yeah, you want to do that. All right. Now, step 4, personalize your pitch. This is where a lot of podcasters go wrong. And let me tell you something. I get at least 2 to 3 times a week, I get a pitch to be a guest on my show. Okay. They send generic guest invites. You can tell it's a canned type of a pitch, right? And so, but you want to personalize it. So let me just give you this quick example. And I must say that I've gotten a few of those too. But again, I have to go back to what I just told you. They have to be in alignment, right? And with their topic, and everything has to be in alignment for me as a guest. But maybe you want, if you're pitching to be a guest on someone's episode or what have you, maybe you can say something like, "Hi, you know, um, I love your recent article on XYZ123. I host, I host the OrganizedPreneur Podcast, where I help solopreneurs create systems and simplify business growth and launch their podcast. I think your insights on whatever that area specific area is would bring tremendous value to our listeners who are learning to, you want to put a pain point there, right? Would you be open to a conversation? That's it. It doesn't have to be long, right? Doesn't have to be long. When you do your homework, people can tell. And that is important. That I've gotten, like, even recently, someone that actually did their homework. If you just send me this template or what have you, to be a guest on my show, then I'm just going to ignore it, right? But a person is more likely to say yes if you've done your homework, right? Okay, so there's that. So personalize your pitch. Then lastly, use your own audience as a resource. Your listeners can be your best resource for referrals. Ask them, who would you love to hear me interview on my show? Right? Is there an expert or a story that inspires your business journey? That would be, you know, a great way to find out if this person is a good guest. Your research, doing research on this, right? Why research matters. It matters so much. Okay. So use your audience as a resource. And then you might be surprised how many qualified leads you get from your own community recommendations. I'm telling you, I wished I had done this when I was, you know, doing interviews when I first started out. This would have been so helpful. So here's how the framework. Let me just kind of give you this quick recap as I close out. So this is the OrganizedPreneur Guest Research Framework. Number one, you want to start with your mission. Okay? Start with your mission. Number two, discover aligned expert. There must be an alignment. Number three, check for value and credibility. Okay? Number four, organize your guest list. Create a little spreadsheet. Number five, personalize your outreach. Don't use some generic template. I don't care how many people you reach out to, you want to make sure that it's personalized. And then, so that was number five. Number six, engage your audience for suggestions. You all have an audience, especially if you're on social media, find out you may be in a community already or have a community. So when you approach your guest research with this kind of intention, you don't just book interviews. You build relationships that grow your brand and deepen your impact. So, hopefully this was helpful for you. If this episode has helped you to rethink how to find and vet your guests, then share it with a friend or someone that you may know that maybe they're ready to elevate their show. Um, if you would like me to create some type of a guest research template, I actually gave that, to you just now with the recap, the framework. You can just use that. And I can put that in the show notes and actually in the comments for you as well. But if that will be helpful. Now, if you want help in streamlining your podcast workflow, strategies for launching your podcast, or even help with your business, then I invite you to actually schedule a complimentary session with me where we will kind of fill in the gaps. Maybe you already have a podcast and you've already launched. Then, you know, you may have some gaps somewhere. Maybe you need a system. Maybe you've launched, but you need a system and things are falling through the cracks, right? But whatever the case may be, I would love to help you and I invite you to um, jump on a call with me for a complimentary um, session. It's not a sales call, it's a complimentary session. And I will put that link also in the show notes as well as um, in the comment section of this live um, episode. I'm really excited about doing this. I usually just record my episodes and then just, put them out on the podcasting platforms. But I think this this is giving me new energy. This is giving me a new, refreshed, and refined way of helping others. And so if you love this, let me know in the comments if you like this episode, if you like them live, if you joined me, or even if you joined the replay, then hey, I would love to know what you thought, right? So jump on a call with me. I would love to help you turn your message into a lead generation machine. Now, until next time, I want you to stay organized, stay focused, and keep sharing your brilliance with the world. This is Aldreama from the OrganizedPreneur Podcast, where I help you to get organized, get heard, and get leads. All right, that's it for now. I'll see you next week.